I'm Michael Jones with Variety here with John Crowley, who has Boy A here. Tell me a little bit about what Boy A is about.
Boy is the story of a young man who's released from prison, who's been incarcerated since he was 12 for his involvement in the murder of another child. And it follows his attempts at reintegrating back into society and finding a life for himself. And it's about the possibility of redemption or a second chance, and whether he's going to be allowed to have that second chance or not.
Mm-hmm. And where did the idea come from?
It's based on a novel
Mm-hmm.
by a writer called Jonathan Tribeca, and the producers, Nick Marston and Tally Garner, first had the idea of transferring it to the screen. They're also agents, and they represent Marco Rowe, who they approached to do the screenplay, and Mark and myself had worked together on my first film, Intermission, so that's how it all sort of connected up.
It reminded me of a story I read that I think happened in London about a little boy who was found on the train tracks, killed, and they didn't have any idea how that boy was killed. And then they started to search the videotapes from convenience stores to see how this boy was led from all the way from his home to the train tracks, and another little boy was leading him there, and it kind of struck me. And that little boy, of course, was put into not a U.S. prison, obviously, but the U.K. prison. Talk about the differences between, the prison system for children in the UK and the prison system for children in America. Quite different, right?
Yes, in the UK, you have a child detention system. It's not, you can't send anybody under the age of 18 to prison. So in the case of the two kids who were involved in the case that you're mentioning, the Jamie Bolger case, they were put into a child detention centre and were released when they're 18, because when they're 18, they're no longer legally allowed to be held in a child detention centre. They have to be transferred to a prison. Their psychiatrist and social worker was very keen to make sure that they didn't go to prison, because there were death threats out from the various prisons that they would have been transferred to because of the notoriety of the case. And that case hovers over the film, even though the film is quite simply not based on it. But when the novelist was writing the story, and indeed the character of Jack apparently is based on somebody he knows who didn't go to prison for murdering anybody, but who had been in a child detention centre, and he watched him struggle as he came out of the child detention centre to reintegrate himself into society. But he did acknowledge that, the whole press sort of bloodlust that there was there, especially in the tabloid newspaper in newspaper industry in England, was very much in the air when he was writing the novel, and I think that's what crystallized it in his head. So yeah.
Did you do other research of other children who've committed kind of horrible acts?
Yeah, there are a bunch of cases. There's another very famous case of a young girl called Mary Bell in England as well. But you do as much research as you can on everything to get the facts right. But we were also very keen to not visually reference those cases in the film. What appealed to me about the film was, strangely actually, how life-affirming the story was, and how watching Jack struggle with finding his first friend, finding his first girlfriend, losing his virginity, his first scrape with drugs, was all very endearing and quite comic and touching, and was a sort of an extreme version of a coming-of-age story. Somebody who's 24 who has a sort of 12-year-old's worldview and has sort of 6 months to catch up on everything, and the things that we take for granted in daily life are huge hurdles for him to have to negotiate, and I found that really compelling.
Yeah. What other films did you reference for this, or used for inspiration? Any particular styles? Was there?
Well,
it seems like a kind of delicate thing that you need to.
Yeah, I suppose that we didn't consciously reference anything, but obviously when you're working, myself and the director of photography would discuss film references in order to develop a shorthand. I was quite keen that the film wouldn't have a sort of a gritty social realist quality to it. Not that there's anything wrong with that, and a lot of my favorite films from the UK have that quality to them. But it felt I didn't want it to have a sort of shaky handheld documentary feeling. I wanted it to be a bit more observational and a little bit more lyrical. To which end we discussed Elephant, the Gus Van Sant film, and the sort of beautiful observational quality that the camera, Harris Savidis, who was the director of photography, had in that. And indeed, that film is based on another film called Elephant, which is an English film by a man named Alan Clark, who made a 35-minute film about the north of Ireland, which is just a series of Steadicam tracking shots just following a series of men walking down streets, shooting somebody else, and then the next one begins. And there's this sort of an ominous quality of following somebody, which comes from that kind of an approach, which we thought would be quite useful in this instance, you know. And another film which actually I found very useful in terms of certain moments in it was, and it's really a huge stretch away from what we've done, it was Brokeback Mountain. Mm-hmm. But again, it's a film about secrecy, mm-hmm. and a film about not being able to show the world who you really are, for fear of what the world will do to you. Mm-hmm. And there were a number of shots in that film where you would expect to be on the character's face, and Ang Lee and his cameraman drift onto the back of their heads instead, and it makes you all the more curious, and it makes you want to get inside that character's head. And so there were a few of the references that we discussed. Right.
It's also like that great shot in Rosemary's Baby where she's talking on the phone to somebody, and you just want to look around the corner.
That's right.
And Roman Polanski denies you that. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming by. Yeah.
Pleasure.